For almost 100 years, the galaxy had known peace. The mighty Zorith Empire ruled thousands of star systems. Their fleets were the largest ever built. Their warships could destroy entire planets. Their armies had defeated every enemy that had dared to challenge them. Because of this, most races believed one thing: the Zorith Empire could never be defeated, far away from the Empire's bright worlds, beyond the edge of explored space. There was a region known as the Dark Zone. Few ships traveled there, even fewer returned. The area was filled with strange signals, dangerous space storms, and empty star systems. Most people ignored it until one small Zorith scouting fleet entered the Dark Zone. During a routine patrol, 3 advanced warships crossed the border and disappeared into the darkness. At first, nobody worried. Scouting ships often lost communication for a few days, but this time was different. Days passed, then weeks. No messages arrived, no distress calls, nothing. It was as if the ships had vanished from existence. The Empire sent another patrol. 5 warships entered the Dark Zone. They never returned. Now military leaders were concerned. 2 fleets could not simply disappear. Something was hiding in the darkness, something dangerous. Soon, High Commander Varek received orders from the Emperor himself. Find out what is happening. Varek was one of the Empire's most respected commanders. He had won dozens of battles and crushed many rebellions. He believed there was a simple explanation. Perhaps pirates, maybe a hidden enemy base, nothing more. To solve the mystery, he sent 20 warships into the Dark Zone. This fleet carried powerful weapons and experienced crews. Nobody expected trouble. The ships moved deeper into the darkness. Hours passed. Then suddenly, communication stopped. Every screen inside Varek's command center went black. Technicians rushed to restore contact. After several minutes, one signal appeared. It was weak, broken, barely understandable. Image showed a Zorith captain covered in blood. Warning lights flashed behind him. Explosions shook the bridge. The captain looked terrified. Varek had never seen fear on a Zorith officer before. The captain struggled to speak. We found them. The transmission crackled. They are stronger than expected. More explosions echoed through the ship. The captain turned towards something outside the screen. His eyes widened. Pure horror filled his face. Then he spoke 6 words that would soon shake the entire galaxy. They are coming, and they are human. The transmission ended. Silence filled the command center. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Humans? That made no sense. Everyone knew about humans. They lived in a small region of space far from the Empire compared to most galactic races. They were newcomers. For decades, humans had focused on trade, science, and exploration. They were not famous for military power. In fact, many alien races considered them weak. Some even laughed at them. The idea that humans had destroyed multiple Zorith fleets sounded impossible. Commander Varek refused to believe it. There must be a mistake, he said, but deep inside, he felt uneasy. Something was wrong, very wrong. Within days, reports spread across the galaxy. The missing fleets, the strange message, mention of humans. Many leaders dismissed the rumors. Others began preparing their defenses. Meanwhile, hidden deep inside the Dark Zone, a massive fleet moved silently through space. Thousands of warships traveled in perfect formation. Their engines glowed blue against the darkness. The ships were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. They were larger, faster, stronger. At the center of the fleet was a gigantic flagship. Inside its command deck stood Admiral Ethan Hayes. He looked calmly at a holographic map of the galaxy around him. Officers worked quietly. Nobody celebrated. Nobody smiled. They all understood the importance of their mission. For years, humanity had remained silent. For years, they had prepared, and now the time had come. An officer approached the admiral. Sir, the Zorith Empire has detected us. Hayes nodded. Expected. They are mobilizing fleets across several sectors. Again. Hayes showed no surprise. Everything was happening exactly as planned. Another officer looked up from her station. "Sir, should we send a message?" For a moment, Hayes remained silent, then he answered, "Yes, what should we say?" The Admiral stared at the stars beyond the bridge window. His expression became serious. "Tell them humanity remembers." The officer hesitated. "That's all?" Hayes nodded. "That's enough, across the galaxy." Confusion continued to grow. Nobody understood why humans were suddenly moving toward Imperial territory. Nobody knew what had happened inside the dark zone, and nobody knew why humanity seemed so confident. Then the first images arrived. Long-range observation stations captured visual recordings near the border. The footage spread rapidly. Citizens, soldiers, and politicians watched in disbelief. A single human battleship emerged from hyperspace, then another, and another. Soon hundreds appeared. The ships were enormous. Many were larger than the Empire's strongest warships. The sight shocked everyone. Fear spread across countless worlds. For the first time in generations, the Zorith Empire faced an enemy it did not understand. An enemy that had appeared from the darkness without warning. An enemy that called itself humanity. And at that very moment, the first human fleet crossed the Imperial border. The greatest war in galactic history was about to begin. The galaxy did not sleep that night. Every news station, military command center, and government building focused on one thing: the human fleet. For the first time in almost a century, fear had entered the heart of the Zorith Empire. Yet Emperor Keller was not afraid. He sat upon his black throne, surrounded by the highest military leaders of the Empire. A giant hologram filled the room. Thousands of blue lights marked human warships moving steadily toward Imperial space. The room was silent. Then the Emperor laughed. A cold, confident laugh. "Humans?" he said. "These are the creatures everyone feared?" No one answered. The Emperor stood and looked at the map. 100 years ago, humans barely possessed interstellar travel. They traded resources and explored empty systems. They were never warriors. His eyes narrowed. "And now we are expected to believe they can challenge the Zorith Empire." Several commanders nodded nervously. Most of them secretly agreed. The Empire had defeated stronger enemies before. Why should humans be different? Commander Varek stepped forward. "My Emperor, we should not underestimate them." The Emperor's smile disappeared. Varek continued. "They destroyed multiple scouting fleets without suffering visible losses. A few missing patrols mean nothing," another commander interrupted. Several officers agreed. The room quickly divided into two groups. One believed humans were a serious threat. The other believed the entire situation was being exaggerated. The Emperor finally raised his hand. Silence returned instantly. "There is only one way to discover the truth." He pointed toward a nearby star system. "The border world of Carthos." A cruel smile appeared on his face. "Send the 7th Battle Group." The officers immediately understood. The 7th Battle Group was one of the Empire's finest fleets. Over 300 warships. Thousands of fighters. Millions of soldiers. It had crushed rebellions across dozens of systems. If humans truly wanted war, Carthos would become their graveyard. 3 days later, the 7th Battle Group arrived at Carthos. The fleet spread across the system like a wall of steel. Massive battleships guarded every approach. Defense stations powered their weapons. Nothing could enter without permission. Admiral Turin, commander of the fleet, felt confident. He stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the stars. "Any sign of the humans?" he asked. "Not yet, sir." Turin smiled. Perhaps the rumors had scared them away. Perhaps humans had finally realized their mistake. Then suddenly, contact. The bridge became silent. Every officer turned toward the sensor station. "What is it?" Turin demanded. The officer looked confused. I don't know, sir. What do you mean you don't know? The young officer swallowed hard. There is only one ship. The bridge erupted with laughter. One ship? After all this panic? After all these warnings? Turin shook his head. This is embarrassing. The officers relaxed. The mysterious human threat had become a joke. Then the sensor officer spoke again. His voice trembled. Sir, that ship is enormous. The laughter stopped. A hologram appeared in the center of the bridge. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The human vessel slowly emerged from hyperspace. It was gigantic, far larger than any known battleship. Its dark metal hull stretched for kilometers. Rows of glowing weapon ports covered its sides. The ship moved slowly, calmly, as if it had nothing to fear. Turin stared in disbelief. Impossible. Then something even stranger happened. The human ship transmitted a message, audio only. A calm human voice filled every Imperial channel. This system is now under human protection. The bridge officers exchanged confused looks. Human protection. The voice continued, we do not seek war. A few commanders laughed. Then the message changed. The voice became colder. But we will finish one if necessary. Silence returned. Terran's face darkened. Nobody threatened the Empire. Nobody, especially not humans. Open a channel. Moments later, communication was established. Turin stood proudly before the screen. You are surrounded by 300 Imperial warships. The human response came immediately. We know. You have entered Imperial space illegally. We know. You will surrender immediately. A brief pause followed. Then the human voice replied, no. The single word echoed through the bridge. Turin felt anger rising inside him. Then you leave me no choice. He turned toward his officers. Prepare weapons. Across the fleet, hundreds of cannons powered up Asterisk. Energy gathered along massive battle stations. Fighter squadrons launched into space. The Empire was ready. The lone human ship remained motionless. No weapons fired. No defensive formations appeared. Nothing. Turin smiled. The humans were bluffing. They had to be. Fire. The order echoed through the fleet. Hundreds of weapons unleashed their power. Bright beams crossed space. Missiles rushed forward. The attack should have destroyed any ship ever built. But before the weapons could strike, the human vessel vanished. Every officer froze. The giant ship simply disappeared. No explosion. No debris. Nothing. Where did it go? Turin shouted. Panic spread across the bridge. Sensors searched desperately. Then alarms exploded across every station. Sir, what now? The sensor officer turned pale. It is behind us. The bridge became silent. Slowly, everyone turned toward the hologram. The impossible had happened. The human battleship now floated directly behind the Imperial fleet. No known technology could perform such a maneuver. No known engine was that fast. Fear entered the room for the first time. The human ship finally activated its weapons. Bright blue light formed along its hull, growing larger. Brighter. More powerful. Turin suddenly realized something terrifying. This had never been a battle. It had been a demonstration, a warning, and the Empire had ignored it. The human voice returned one final time. We offered peace. The blue light intensified. We will not offer it again. Then the weapon fired, and the stars themselves seemed to shake. Asterisk, the weapon fired. A beam of blue energy crossed space in less than a second. No one on the Imperial fleet had ever seen anything like it. There was no explosion. No massive fireball. No dramatic flash. The beam simply touched the lead battleship, and the ship vanished. Gone. As if it had never existed. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The bridge of Admiral Terran's flagship became completely silent. Then alarms erupted everywhere. Lead battleship destroyed. Energy readings off the scale. We cannot identify the weapon. The officers stared at their screens in shock. One ship, A single human ship. And it had just erased one of the Empire's most powerful warships. Turin felt cold. Not fear. Not yet, but something close to it. He quickly regained control. All fleets advance. Hundreds of Imperial ships moved forward. Thousands of fighters rushed into battle. The Empire still had overwhelming numbers. One ship could not defeat them all. At least that was what Turin believed. Then another alarm sounded. Multiple contacts detected. Turin turned sharply. How many? The sensor officer looked confused, then terrified. His hands trembled over the controls. Sir, I cannot calculate the exact number. What do you mean? The officer swallowed hard. They just keep appearing. The hologram zoomed outward. Every officer on the bridge stared in disbelief. New human ships were emerging from hyperspace. Not dozens. Not hundreds. Thousands. They appeared silently across the entire system. Dark warships filled space in every direction. It looked as if the stars themselves were transforming into human fleets. Nobody understood how they had arrived undetected. The human fleet had been hiding nearby the entire time. Waiting. Preparing. Tren suddenly realized the truth. The giant battleship had never come alone. It had been bait. A trap. And the Empire had flown directly into it. Millions of kilometers away, aboard the human flagship Resolute, Admiral Ethan Hayes watched the battlefield unfold. His officers remained calm. Focused. Disciplined. Unlike the Imperial commanders, nobody celebrated. The battle had only begun. Status report, Hayes said. A young officer stepped forward. Ghost Fleet has entered the system. Hayes nodded. The Ghost Fleet, the secret fleet humanity had spent 30 years building in hidden shipyards. Very few people outside Earth even knew it existed. Every vessel carried advanced technology developed in complete secrecy. For decades, humanity had prepared for this day, not because they wanted war, because they expected it. History had taught them a painful lesson. Many years ago, the Zorith Empire had quietly destroyed several human colonies near the border. The Empire called it an accident. Humanity knew better. Thousands of innocent settlers had died. The Empire never apologized, never paid compensation. Never accepted responsibility. Humanity had remembered. And while the galaxy laughed at them, humans had worked year after year, ship after ship, fleet after fleet. Now the bill had finally arrived. Back at Karthos, the Imperial fleet opened fire. Thousands of weapons lit up space. Missiles, plasma beams, and energy cannons filled the darkness. The attack would have destroyed almost any enemy fleet. But the humans moved differently. Their ships split apart, changed formation instantly, avoided attacks with impossible precision. Entire salvos missed their targets. Imperial commanders watched in disbelief. Human vessels seemed to predict every attack before it happened. Then the counterattack began. Human railguns fired. Massive metal projectiles crossed space at incredible speeds. One Imperial cruiser exploded, then another, then 5 more. The battlefield descended into chaos. Orders became confused. Communication channels overflowed. For the first time in living memory, Imperial officers were losing control of a battle. Turin gripped the edge of his command console. This was impossible. The Empire had superior numbers. Superior resources. Superior experience. Yet somehow they were losing. And the battle had barely started. Suddenly another officer shouted, "Sir, human ships are bypassing our front line." Terran's eyes widened. On the hologram, several human squadrons ignored the main battle entirely. Instead, they moved toward critical supply vessels and communication stations. They were targeting infrastructure, not warships. It was a strategy. No Imperial commander would use . And it was working. One by one, supply ships exploded. Communication relays vanished. Fuel depots disappeared. The Empire's giant fleet was slowly becoming blind. Then the final blow arrived. A transmission appeared on every Imperial screen. Admiral Hayes stood calmly before the camera. Behind him, hundreds of human officers worked quietly. No cheering. No arrogance. Only confidence. Hayes looked directly into the camera. This war can still end today. Several Imperial officers laughed bitterly. Hayes ignored them. Withdraw from Carthos. Silence filled every bridge. Hayes continued. We did not come to conquer. The statement surprised everyone. Across the galaxy, countless viewers watched the broadcast. Even civilians were listening now. The human admiral's expression never changed. We came for justice. The transmission ended. No threats. No insults. No celebration. Just those 3 words. Justice. The message spread across hundreds of worlds within hours. And for the first time, people began asking dangerous questions. Why were humans really fighting? What had happened between humanity and the Empire all those years ago? And most importantly, what other secrets had the Empire been hiding? Meanwhile, on the battlefield, the impossible became reality. The 7th Battle Group began retreating. The fleet that had never lost a battle. The fleet feared across the galaxy. Was running away. Admiral Turin watched the withdrawal in silence. Around him, damaged ships fled toward safety. Thousands of soldiers were dead. Dozens of warships had been destroyed. And the battle was not even close. Empire had been completely outmatched. As his flagship jumped into hyperspace, Turin stared at the final battlefield report. Then his blood turned cold. A new message had appeared from Imperial intelligence. Urgent classified report. Additional human fleets detected. Turin frowned. How many? The answer appeared on the screen. His face became pale. Because the fleet at Carthos. Was only one of 7. And all 7 were now moving toward Imperial territory. The news spread faster than light. The mighty 7th Battle Group had been defeated. Not by a giant alliance. Not by a hidden alien empire. But by humans. Across the galaxy, millions watched the battle recordings again and again. Every military academy studied the footage. Every government demanded answers. And every citizen asked the same question. How did humanity become this powerful? No one seemed to know. For over a century, humans had appeared peaceful. They traded with neighbors. They built research stations. They explored distant stars. They rarely joined galactic conflicts. Most races viewed humanity as intelligent but harmless. Now that image was shattered because the humans who appeared at Carthos were not the same humans the galaxy remembered. Something had changed. Something important. And deep within the Imperial capital, Emperor Keller wanted answers. Immediately. Inside the Imperial Palace, the emergency council gathered. The atmosphere was different this time. The confidence was gone. The smiles had disappeared. Even the Emperor looked troubled. Giant hologram displayed the latest reports. Destroyed fleets, lost territory, human advances. None of it made sense. Commander Varric stepped forward. Your Majesty, we have discovered something. The Emperor raised an eyebrow. Speak. Varric activated a hidden file. Ancient records appeared in the air. Records sealed for decades. Records that very few people knew existed. The room became silent. What are these? Asked the Emperor. Varric hesitated. Then answered. They concern humanity. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Continue. A new image appeared. It showed a small human colony world. Simple buildings. Families. Children. Farmers. Nothing dangerous. Nothing military. Then another image appeared. The colony was burning. Ships crashed across the surface. Cities were gone. Millions were dead. The council members stared in shock. What happened? One officer asked. Varric looked uncomfortable. The colony was destroyed 72 years ago. By whom? The commander swallowed hard, then spoke the truth. By us. The room froze. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. For decades, the Empire had claimed the colony was destroyed by a mining accident. Now the truth was finally revealed. Imperial warships had attacked. The colony was destroyed by a mining accident. Now the truth was finally revealed. Imperial warships had attacked the Galactic world. The operation had been secret. The goal was simple. The colony sat above a rare energy resource. The Empire wanted it. The humans refused to leave. So the Empire removed them. By force. Millions died. The incident was covered up. Most Imperial citizens never learned the truth. The galaxy never learned the truth. But humanity did, and humanity never forgot. The Emperor stared at the records. For the first time, real concern appeared in his eyes. "You are telling me," he said slowly, "that this war began because of a colony?" Varric shook his head. "No, Majesty." He activated another file, then another. And another. The room grew silent again, because the destroyed colony had not been the only incident. There were dozens human cargo, ships attacked, human settlements destroyed, human explorers disappearing near Imperial space. Each event had been hidden. Each event had been explained away. Each event pushed humanity closer to a decision, the decision to prepare, the decision to never be weak again. Far away, on Earth, Admiral Hayes stood inside a massive underground facility. The structure stretched for kilometers beneath the planet's surface. Very few people knew it existed. Even fewer had entered it. Rows of giant holograms displayed fleet movements across the galaxy. Engineers worked around the clock. Scientists monitored advanced systems. This was the heart of humanity's defense network. The project had begun after the colony massacre. For 70 years, humanity had quietly transformed itself, not publicly, not aggressively, secretly, patiently. Every lesson was recorded. Every weakness was studied. Every mistake was corrected. Human leaders knew one simple truth. The galaxy respected power. Without strength, peace could never be guaranteed. So humanity built strength. They developed new engines. New weapons. New defenses. New fleets. All hidden behind the image of a peaceful civilization. While others laughed at humans, humans were learning. While others celebrated victories, humans were preparing. And now the preparation was complete. A young officer approached Hayes. "Sir," Hayes turned, "we've received the latest intelligence." "Let's hear it." The officer activated a hologram. 7 red markers appeared. The 7 human fleets. All advancing. All winning. All unstoppable. Then another symbol appeared. Massive gold marker near the center of Imperial territory. Hayes immediately recognized it. The Imperial Fortress. World. The strongest military position in the galaxy. Billions of soldiers. Thousands of defense platforms. Countless warships. Empire believed it was impossible to capture. The officer looked at Hayes. "Our scouts confirm the Empire is moving everything there." Hayes nodded slowly, exactly as expected. The Empire was gathering its forces for one decisive battle, one final stand. Back in Imperial space, fear continued spreading. Entire systems prepared evacuation plans. Military leaders requested reinforcements. Border worlds surrendered without resistance. The unstoppable Empire suddenly looked vulnerable. Then something happened that shocked everyone. A neutral alien government released classified information. Then another. And another. The truth about the destroyed human colonies began appearing across the galaxy. Old secrets surfaced. Hidden crimes became public. The Empire's reputation started collapsing. Many races felt betrayed. Others felt angry. Some even switched sides. For the first time in history, support for the Empire began disappearing. The galaxy was changing. And it was changing fast. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship Resolute, Admiral Hayes received the final report. He read it quietly. Then looked out at the stars. One of his officers noticed the serious expression on his face. "Sir?" Hayes handed him the report. The officer read it. His eyes widened. "Impossible." Hayes nodded. It appears the Empire has finally made its choice. The officer looked up. What do we do now? Hayes remained silent for several seconds. Then he gave a single order. Prepare all fleets. The officer immediately understood. This was it. The moment everyone had been expecting. The final phase of the war. Across the galaxy, 7 human fleets suddenly changed course. Instead of attacking separate targets, they began moving toward a single destination. One location. One battlefield. One showdown. And waiting there was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. The battle that shook the galaxy was about to enter its most dangerous chapter. Asterisk. The galaxy had seen wars before. It had seen empires rise. It had seen civilizations fall, but nothing compared to what was happening now, because this was no longer a border conflict. This was no longer a dispute between two powers. This was a storm that threatened to change the entire galaxy forever. And at the center of that storm stood humanity, near the heart of Imperial space. Thousands of warships gathered around the fortress world of Draconis Prime. The planet was legendary. For over 300 years, no enemy had ever reached it. Its defenses were considered impossible to break. Massive orbital cannons surrounded the world. Defense stations filled nearby space. Shield generators protected the planet from attack. Millions of soldiers waited below. Every remaining Imperial fleet had been ordered there. The Emperor wanted one final battle. One battle to decide everything. Inside the Imperial Command Center, Emperor Keller stood before a giant holographic map. Red warning symbols covered the screen. Human fleets were approaching from every direction. Closer every hour, closer every minute. The room felt heavy with tension. No one spoke. No one dared. Then a young officer rushed into the chamber. His face was pale. Your Majesty. Keller looked at him. What is it? The officer hesitated. The humans have entered the Draconis system. The room became silent. They had arrived, millions of kilometers away. 7 human fleets emerged from hyperspace. The sight was breathtaking. Endless lines of warships filled the darkness. Battleships. Carriers. Destroyers. Thousands upon thousands of vessels. The largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. At the center stood the flagship, Resolute. Admiral Ethan Hayes watched the fortress world appear on the main screen. Even he was impressed. The Empire had poured everything into this defense. If humanity failed here, the war could last decades. But Hayes did not intend to fail. An officer stepped forward. Sir, enemy numbers exceed projections. Hayes nodded. We expected that. Should we begin the attack? Hayes looked at the planet. Then at the massive fleet protecting it. His answer surprised everyone. No. Several officers exchanged confused looks. No, sir? Hayes shook his head. We offer peace one last time. The bridge fell silent. Some officers seemed shocked. After everything the Empire had done. After decades of preparation. After countless battles. Humanity was still offering peace. Hayes activated a transmission. His face appeared on every military channel in the system. Imperial crews watched. Human crews watched. Even civilians across the galaxy watched. Hayes spoke calmly. Emperor Keller. His voice echoed through space. This war does not need to continue. Silence followed. Then Hayes continued. Withdraw your forces. Accept responsibility for the crimes committed against humanity. End the conflict. Millions listened. Waiting. Watching. Hoping. Then Emperor Keller appeared on the screen. His expression was cold. Furious. Defiant. You speak of peace while invading my territory. Hayes remained calm. You had 70 years to choose peace. Keller's eyes burned with anger. The Zorath Empire does not surrender. The transmission ended, and with it, the last chance to stop the war. Moments later, alarms exploded across every ship. The battle had begun. Imperial defense cannons fired first. Thousands of energy beams crossed space. The darkness vanished beneath endless flashes of light. Human fleets responded. Immediately, missiles launched by the tens of thousands, railguns thundered. Fighters rushed forward. The entire star system became a battlefield. Explosions lit the void. Warships vanished in fire. Communication channels overflowed. Everywhere. Ships fought for survival. Yet despite the chaos, Admiral Hayes remained focused. He wasn't looking at enemy battleships. He wasn't watching the defense stations. His attention was fixed on something else. A hidden structure beneath the fortress world. For months, human intelligence had been investigating rumors of a secret Imperial weapon. Now, they had finally found it. Deep beneath Draconis Prime, hidden under kilometers of reinforced armor. The Empire's ultimate weapon. Project Oblivion. Inside the Imperial bunker, scientists worked desperately. Huge machines hummed with power. Energy levels climbed higher every minute. Engineers shouted instructions. Warning lights flashed everywhere. At the center of the facility stood a machine unlike anything ever built. A weapon designed for only one purpose: total destruction. If activated, it could destroy entire star systems. Not planets. Not fleets. Entire systems. Billions of lives would vanish instantly. The Empire had secretly developed it for decades, and now they were preparing to use it. One scientist looked nervously toward the command platform. Energy levels approaching activation threshold. Another scientist swallowed hard. Once we start, there is no turning back. Nobody answered, because everyone already knew. Back aboard the Resolute, a signal arrived from human intelligence. A young officer quickly read the report. His face turned pale. "Sir," Hayes looked up. "What happened?" The officer handed him the data. Hayes studied it. His expression hardened. For the first time in the entire war, anger appeared in his eyes. Project Oblivion was real. And according to the report, the weapon would be ready within hours. The bridge became silent. Everyone waited. Then Hayes stood. Every officer immediately focused on him. "What are your orders, sir?" Hayes looked toward Draconis Prime, toward the hidden weapon beneath the surface, toward the threat that could kill billions. Then he gave the order that would change the war forever. "Prepare Strike Team Omega." Several officers froze. They knew exactly what that meant. Omega missions were considered nearly impossible. Most never returned. The officer hesitated. "Sir, Omega Team's chances are less than 10%. Hayes nodded. "I know. And if they fail?" Hayes looked at the burning battlefield outside, then at the report in his hand. His answer was quiet, but every person on the bridge heard it clearly. "If they fail." He paused. "The galaxy burns." Far below the fortress world, Project Oblivion continued charging. Above the planet, the largest battle in galactic history raged, and somewhere inside the chaos, a small human strike force was preparing for a mission from which they might never return. The battle for Draconis Prime had been raging for 12 straight hours. Space itself seemed to be burning. Thousands of wrecked warships drifted through the darkness. Broken fighters spun silently among fields of debris. Explosions flashed across the system like dying stars. Neither side was willing to retreat. Neither side could afford to lose. But while the galaxy watched the battle above the planet, very few knew the real war was happening below it. Deep beneath the surface of Draconis Prime. Project Oblivion continued charging, and time was running out. Inside a hidden launch bay aboard the Resolute, 12 soldiers stood beside a black transport shuttle. They wore advanced combat armor. No medals. No special markings. No signs of rank. Only a small symbol on their shoulders. Earth. These were Omega Team, humanity's best special operations unit. The missions nobody else could complete. The missions nobody else could survive. Captain Marcus Kane stood at the front of the group. Veteran of countless battles. A man known for achieving the impossible. Yet, Even he knew this mission was different. A young soldier looked toward him. "Captain, what are our chances?" Several team members glanced over. Everyone already knew the answer. Kane smiled slightly. "Bad." A few soldiers laughed. The tension eased for a moment. Then Kane continued, "Good thing we're not here for good odds." The laughter returned. That was humanity. Even standing on the edge of death, they still found reasons to smile. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Hayes watched the countdown clock. 4 hours remained. After that, Project Oblivion would become operational. If activated, entire sectors of the galaxy could disappear. Billions of lives depended on Omega Team. The responsibility weighed heavily on everyone. An officer approached. "Sir, Omega Team is ready." Hayes nodded slowly. He activated a private channel. Captain Kane's face appeared on the screen. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Finally, Hayes broke the silence. "You know what's at stake?" Kane nodded. "We do." "If things go wrong," Kane smiled, "they usually do." Several officers nearby chuckled nervously. Hayes almost smiled himself, almost. Then his expression became serious again. "Bring them home, Captain." Kane looked at his team. Then back at the Admiral. "I'll bring home whoever I can." The transmission ended. Moments later, the shuttle launched straight into hell. The journey to the planet was brutal. Imperial defenses filled the skies. Missiles exploded around them. Energy cannons fired from orbit. Enemy fighters hunted anything that moved. The shuttle twisted through the chaos, dodging fire, diving through debris, barely staying intact. Inside the transport, nobody spoke. They simply checked weapons, reviewed plans, prepared themselves. Finally, the pilot shouted, "Approaching target." The surface appeared below a massive mountain range. Beneath it lay Project Oblivion, the most dangerous weapon ever built. The shuttle descended rapidly, then disaster struck an enemy. Defense cannon fired. The blast hit the shuttle's wind warning alarms screamed. The entire craft shook violently. "We're hit." Smoke filled the cabin. Systems failed one after another. The pilot fought desperately for control. Emergency landing. The shuttle crashed into the mountainside. Metal screamed, rock shattered. Everything became darkness. Several minutes later, Captain Kane opened his eyes. Pain shot through his body. The shuttle was destroyed. Smoke filled the air. Pieces of wreckage surrounded them, slowly. He stood. "Report," one by one. Voices answered. Most of the team had survived. Not all 3 soldiers were gone. Mission had already taken casualties, and they had not even reached the target. Kane looked toward the distant mountain. The facility was still. "They're still charging, still counting down toward disaster. We move." Nobody complained. Nobody hesitated. The team grabbed their equipment and started forward. Meanwhile, far beneath the surface, Imperial scientists celebrated. Project Oblivion was almost ready. Energy levels continued rising. Success seemed certain then. A security officer rushed into the control room. Intruders detected. The room fell silent. The lead scientist frowned. "How many?" 12. Several people laughed. 12 soldiers? Against an entire fortress? Impossible. The scientist waved dismissively. "Send security teams." He returned to his work. The weapon would soon be complete. Nothing could stop it now. Hours past. Omega Team fought deeper into the facility. Hallway after hallway, room after room. The defenders were everywhere, but the humans kept moving. Every obstacle slowed them. None stopped them. Yet with each battle, their numbers shrank. 12 became 10, 10 became 8, 8 became 6. Still they advanced. Still they refused to quit. Finally, they reached the central reactor chamber, and what they saw made them stop. The room was enormous, towering. Machines stretched upward for hundreds of meters. Energy surged through giant conduit. At the center stood the core of Project Oblivion. Its power was terrifying. Captain Kane stared at it. Now he understood why humanity feared this weapon. Activation 1 command, and entire civilizations would disappear. A voice suddenly echoed through the chamber. "You're too late." The lead scientist stepped forward. Smile crossed his face. He pointed toward a giant display screen. Kane followed his gaze. His blood turned cold. The countdown showed only 10 minutes. Remaining 10 minutes until activation. 10 minutes until billions could die. The scientist laughed. You fought all this way for nothing. Omega team exchanged worried looks. They were outnumbered, running out of ammunition, and almost out of time. Then Kane noticed something, a maintenance shaft connected directly to the reactor. Korea. Dangerous path, a deadly path, but perhaps the only path left. He looked at his remaining team. Everyone immediately understood. Nobody argued, nobody objected, because they all knew what had to happen. One soldier quietly asked the question nobody wanted to say aloud. Captain, if we destroy the core from inside. He never finished the sentence. Didn't need to. The answer was obvious. No one inside the reactor chamber would survive. Kane looked toward the glowing core, then toward the countdown clock. 9 minutes remaining. Finally, he gave his order, a simple order, the kind that changes history. Let's finish this. And as Omega team moved toward the reactor core, a new warning appeared on every Imperial command screen, a warning that made even Emperor Keller stand in shock, because another human fleet had just entered the system. A fleet nobody knew existed, a fleet larger than all 7 combined, and leading it was a ship unlike anything ever built. Humanity's final weapon had arrived. Asterisk. The stars themselves seemed to stop. Across the battlefield, thousands of ships suddenly ceased firing. Imperial commanders stared at their sensors. Human officers froze in disbelief. Even Admiral Hayes stood motionless on the bridge of the Resolute, because the fleet entering the system was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. It stretched across space from horizon to horizon. Millions of lights appeared in the darkness. Thousands of warships emerged from hyperspace every second. Battleships, carriers, heavy cruisers, defense platforms, entire mobile shipyards. The force was so large that sensor systems struggled to count it. For a moment, nobody understood what they were seeing. Then a message arrived from Earth, and everything became clear. 70 years earlier, after the destruction of the human colonies, humanity had begun Project Guardian, a secret plan hidden even from most human governments. Its purpose was simple. Asterisk. If the galaxy ever faced a threat capable of destroying civilizations, humanity would have one final defense. For decades, hidden shipyards had operated beyond explored space. Entire fleets had been built in complete secrecy. Resources had been gathered. Technology had been perfected. Generations of people had worked without recognition. Now their creation had finally arrived. Humanity's last fleet. The Guardian fleet. Inside the Imperial Palace bunker, Emperor Keller stared at the reports. His face had become pale. For the first time in his life, he felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Real fear. The Empire still had ships. Still had soldiers. Still had weapons. But now he understood that truth. Humanity had been preparing for this war long before it began. Asterisk. Every move, every battle, every sacrifice, all part of a plan decades in the making. A trembling officer approached. Asterisk. Your Majesty. Keller looked up. What? The officer swallowed hard. Our outer defenses have collapsed. Another officer stood. Sector 7 has fallen. Then another. Defense Grid 4 destroyed. The reports kept coming. The Empire was breaking apart. Asterisk. Meanwhile, deep beneath Draconis Prime, Omega team reached the reactor core. Only 4 soldiers remained. The rest had fallen along the way. Captain Marcus Kane looked at the countdown. 4 minutes. Project Oblivion continued charging. The massive reactor glowed brighter every second. If it activated, everything they had fought for would be lost. One of the soldiers placed explosive charges around the core. Another checked the timer. Then everyone became silent, because they knew what came next. The blast radius was too large. There was no escape route. No rescue. No miracle. The mission would succeed, but they would not survive. A young soldier looked at Kane. "Think anyone will remember us?" Kane smiled. "Not for what we did." The soldier frowned. "What do you mean?" Kane looked toward the reactor. "People won't remember us." Then he pointed upward. "They'll remember what survives." For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then they all smiled. The charges were armed. The timer started. 3 minutes. Above the planet. The Guardian fleet entered battle. The effect was immediate. Imperial formations collapsed. Human warships surged forward. Defense stations exploded. Enemy fleets retreated. After hours of brutal fighting, momentum finally shifted. For the first time, victory seemed possible. Admiral Hayes watched the battle unfold. Then, a new signal appeared. Omega Team. The connection was weak, barely stable. Kane's face appeared on the screen. Smoke filled the background. Warning alarms echoed behind him. Hayes immediately understood. There would be no extraction. "Captain." Kane smiled. "We found it." The Admiral nodded. "Good work." A brief silence followed. Then Kane asked one final question. "Did we win?" Hayes looked through the bridge window. Human ships filled the stars. Imperial forces were retreating. The battle was turning. Slowly. He smiled. "Yes." Kane closed his eyes for a moment, as if a great weight had been lifted. Then he nodded. "Good." The transmission ended. 30 seconds later, Project Oblivion disappeared. In a flash of light, the explosion shook the planet. The reactor was gone. The weapon was gone. Omega Team was gone. But the galaxy had been saved. Hours later, the Imperial defenses finally collapsed. Human fleets surrounded Draconis Prime. War was over. Emperor Keller sat alone inside his command chamber. His empire had ruled the galaxy for centuries. Now, it was finished. A door opened behind him. Human soldiers entered. Not firing. Not shouting. Simply waiting. Keller slowly stood. "Is this where you execute me?" The soldiers said nothing. Moments later, Admiral Hayes entered the room. The Emperor looked directly at him. "After everything that happened," he laughed bitterly, "you finally have your revenge." Hayes remained silent. Then he shook his head. "No." Keller frowned. "No?" Hayes looked around the room. At the symbols of power. At the empire that had caused so much suffering. Then he answered, "Revenge built this war. We're here to end it." The Emperor stared at him in disbelief. Humanity had won. They could take everything. The throne, territory. The power. Instead, they chose something unexpected. Peace. Months later, the galaxy began rebuilding. Former imperial worlds gained independence. Trade routes reopened. Old enemies became allies. Memorials were built for the fallen. Among them stood a monument dedicated to Omega Team. No giant statues. No grand palace. Just 12 names carved into stone, and beneath them, a single sentence. They gave their future so others could have one. Years passed. The scars of war slowly faded, but the story never disappeared. Across countless worlds, children learned about the conflict that changed history. The day an empire fell, the day humanity stood against impossible odds. The day ordinary people proved stronger than fear. And whenever the story was told, it always ended with the same words. The galaxy once feared human strength, but in the end, it was human mercy that shook the galaxy the most.